Digital well-being is using technology in service of your needs, your values, and your aspirations. Are you making decisions that add up to a life that feels meaningful and satisfying to you? Did you allow the persuasive influence of technology, the buzzes, dings, notifications of your phone, the constant parade of emails trotting through your inbox, so on and so forth, guide you and your attention through your day? Or are you rooting how you decide how you spend your time and what you put your attention on in your needs, your values, or your aspirations?
Welcome to Freedom Matters, where we explore the intersection of technology, productivity, and digital well-being. I'm your host, Georgie Powell, and each week we'll be talking to experts in productivity and digital wellness. We'll be sharing their personal stories and experience on how to take back control of technology. We hope you leave feeling inspired, so let's get to it. This week, I'm in conversation with Giancarlo Pitocco, founder of Purposeful Digital. Leveraging his experience studying the relationship of people and technology at companies like Facebook, Instagram, and Apple, he's on a mission to liberate our creative intelligence from distractive technology. I thought this would be a nice, quick and tidy 15-minute recording. How wrong I was. Over the course of an hour, we covered distances spanning from frameworks of understanding digital well-being to leadership and technology, and just how to remodel the attention economy. However, in honour of our mission to keep these podcasts concise, our conversation has been split over 2 episodes. Today, we're talking about social hierarchy of needs, hybrid workplaces, and the best ways to manage Zoom fatigue. Giancarlo, welcome to Freedom Matters. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Georgie. It's a pleasure to be here and see you again.
I always love our conversations, so I'm really excited about today. I thought a really good way to start would be to begin with the framework that you use when you work with your individual clients, but also with corporates to help them get a better handle on digital well-being. I know you use a series of frameworks that are really helpful and certainly have helped me think about how to get a better grip of my own technology. Perhaps you'd like to share some of those approaches with our listeners today.
Yeah, Georgie. So I think I'm not alone in this category in finding out that the audiences that we work with, the clients that we work with, the people we're trying to help raise awareness of this issue and adopt better healthy habits, healthier relationship with technology, it's important to explain things in a context that's familiar to them instead of giving them a whole new thing. Digital well-being is a term that I still have to define in a lot of meetings for people. So I think it's really important to make things like this as relatable and familiar as possible. And I don't think I'm alone in turning to nutrition as a familiar metaphor. What we consume, what we put into our bodies affects our health in many ways. And that has now reached mainstream awareness where people understand nutrition really well. And so I have taken the work of Sherry Turkle, love her, from MIT. She has a wonderful book called Reclaiming Conversation.
Yeah.
And it's one of my faves, and I reference her work a lot because she talks about the difference between mere digital connection versus face-to-face conversation, and how most of the machinery up in our heads is evolved there, as we are social beings, to process this rich spectrum of data that we get when we're face-to-face with someone that we don't get when we're just texting or going through social media to interact with them. So we, use technology to communicate. It gets distilled down into this thin little bandwidth of just language, when actually there's a rich human experience that we're draining out of it. Facial expressions, physical contact, body language, so on and so forth, that we're depriving our minds of. It doesn't leave us feeling well. And so I liken the online or mere digital connection kind of interactions to almost like junk food. It's like Doritos. It looks like food. It kind of smells like something you want to eat, but you can't live off of that alone. And so that inspired me to create the hierarchy of social needs, which is modeled after the food pyramid, the nutrition guide that I grew up with when I was a kid, that shows, by ratio, how much of each food group you should be consuming. And I've adapted that to show what are the most nourishing kinds of social interactions from in-person, face-to-face interactions, right on up to likes and shares and comments on social media and everything in between. I even put solitude in there. video chat, which has, of course, become like our dominant way to get the closest thing to face-to-face interaction in the age of COVID. So this is a framework that just helps people understand that the kinds of interactions, the media they use to interact with people and the quality of interaction that it allows affects their well-being, affects their emotional health in ways that they might not even be conscious of. And so this raises awareness and puts it in a framework that's familiar, where you know if you eat food that's rich in vegetables, that's going to be better for you than if you're overdoing it with the fats, oils, sweets, junk food, digital Doritos. You want a really nourishing and well-balanced interaction. And this also helps shift people from this black and white mentality, which I think we see a lot of in this space, where people who are new to the topic just want to know what is right and what is wrong. And they think that we're saying that technology is bad versus good. And it's not like that. It's about having a balanced diet of social experiences or digital experiences that serve you. And so you go to a nutritionist, and what they recommend to you, Georgie, is going to be different than what they recommend to me, because what my body needs is different than what yours needs. And same thing is true here. What I'm going to help someone understand about the types of tools and ways they should be interacting with people is different than the other person. You know, if you're in a long distance relationship, you're going to be using a lot more technology to stay in touch than someone who lives with their spouse or significant other. So it's been a powerful tool to reframe this and just create some familiarity where they're like, oh, I get it. So it's not black and white, and I can kind of tell like which of these kinds of interactions leave me feeling better. So I can intuitively, they don't need to keep coming back to me for answers or advice. They can start intuitively, you know, if they're willing, understand what that healthy relationship is for them.
And what kind of utility fits in different buckets in that hierarchy of needs, or that sort of the food triangle. And I know when we spoke before as well, you talked about sort of this concept of needs, values and aspirations when trying to understand how we should use tech. Can you talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, this is fundamental to the entire philosophy that I teach from, which is, and it's again striking at that perception that there's a black and white, right and wrong answer to all of this in our relationship with technology. And the thing that I tell people is digital well-being is using technology in service of your needs, your values, and your aspirations. And this is at the core. If you're being really conscious and intentional about how you are navigating your relationship with technology and use thereof, you are rooting those decisions either intuitively or actively in your needs, your values, and your aspirations. And when I say aspirations, I mean for the kind of life you want to have. Most people at the end of their life will tell you the meaningful things that they did led them to feel a more sense of satisfaction with the quality of their life. If you spend your time on meaningful pursuits. And so what are your aspirations for the kind of life you want to have? And are you making decisions moment to moment, day by day, week by week, year by year, that add up to a life that feels meaningful and satisfying to you? Or did you allow the persuasive influence of technology, the buzzes, dings, notifications of your phone, the constant parade of emails trotting through your inbox, so on and so forth, guide you and your attention through your day? Or are you rooting how you decide how you spend your time and what you put your attention on in your needs, your values, or your aspirations? And so this creates an awareness that allows people to fill in the blanks for themselves, instead of me prescribing, you should take time every morning to do the following things, and you should delete this app and enable this app and do that thing or do that thing. The technology comes in to support your needs, values, and aspirations once you have greater awareness of those things. And then I'm going to delete this app, or I'm going to reduce the amount of time I spend on that, or I'm going to curate this feed to only show me inspiring and uplifting things and not all this other garbage that distracts me, makes me feel bad. You can make all the decisions you need if you have awareness of your needs, values, and aspirations, and then apply that to, okay, what's my relationship with technology? What role do I want it to serve in my life?
And so that's, I think, hugely helpful if you are able to get to a point where you kind of understand what your values and your aspirations are, which can be quite challenging itself, right? So how have you personally worked through that? And then how do you use technology yourself in finding a more meaningful life?
Well, for me, it started with the wake-up call to the fact that I didn't have a healthy relationship with technology, which, as someone who worked in tech, I was at Facebook when I decided this is the work that I needed to be doing with my life for obvious reasons. You're in the belly of the beast who's causing a large part of the problem. So I woke up to the fact that I'm not using it well, and my starting point for shifting or becoming aware of the needs, values, aspirations that was going to guide this was taking a look at the habits I had with technology that I suddenly realized weren't serving me very well, and flipped them on their head. So instead of technology being the source of distraction or consumption for me, I wanted it to be a source of inspiration and creativity. So using that as a framework to vet a lot of the technology that was a primary source of distraction for me allowed me to either cut it out, set healthy boundaries or set limits, or change what I was seeing in those things. I'm thinking of like Facebook and Instagram right now. For a while, I cut them out of my life entirely. I deleted my newsfeed. I figured out that you can actually erase your newsfeed so that after a couple days of changing these settings, nothing shows up there. And that was like amazing. That was like a digital Zen moment of realizing I could get to newsfeed 0. That was cool. And then I carefully reintroduced things that I thought would be valuable. So great philosophers, people posting that kind of stuff, Eckhart Tolle, Marianne Williamson, things that I asked myself, what would leave me feeling good if I went to Facebook? And it was two things. It was philosophers, thinkers, folks in the spiritual world, and it was local groups and communities that I belonged to in the physical world that convened online to organize their meetups and kind of stay connected in between gatherings. And that, back when we used to do that sort of thing. And that felt really good to me. And so that was a big awakening, was like, okay, I have to decide what I want to be doing with my time. There's my aspirations. What kind of life do I want to have? I should rethink this now that I've realized how much of my time and attention I was diverting into not very meaningful diversions and distractions of technology.
That is really helpful. Actually, it's really inspired me to go and clean up some of the things I'm doing.
Look, this is something we continually
it just gets out
need
of
to
hand,
check
doesn't
on.
it?
It does. As we add more things in, I like to talk about how the Amish bring technology into their communities, because we kind of say here in the U.S., and I don't know how famous the Amish are outside of the U.S., but they're famously here Luddites, as we call them. They're like they resist modern technology, but it's actually not true. They're just very, very intentional about what they decide to introduce to their communities. So the story I tell that I heard on I think an NPR podcast once upon a time was that someone could come to the council of elders or their community board in an Amish community and say, hey, I was in town the other day and I saw people are using these things like smartphones. They seem to be very handy. Maybe we should try them out. And this board could say, okay, only you and only in these contexts, maybe while you're in your vehicle. And over the next weeks or months, we're going to keep an eye on how this changes the way you show up for your family, for the community, how you're doing as an individual. What are the effects of introducing this on a small scale? And then we'll make a decision about if it warrants a broader rollout, keeping an eye on what are the downsides of this and the upsides, and carefully. It's the same thing we should be doing for ourselves as we introduce new things, new habits, new technologies, new tools, especially in this age where we're on Zoom all day. What does that mean? How do we make that work for ourselves? Constantly checking in and maybe editing or revising some of our habits or settings of our phone to work for us.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to create those moments, right? Because it's difficult. It's not like the technology is being introduced or not. It's being evolved with stealth. It's incrementally changing all the time. And so there's never a point where you didn't have it and then you have it again, because that's just not how it works. So it's like before you realize it, your habits have shifted because the technology has slowly shifted, and you need to consciously put in these moments to recheck and reintroduce that intention into the way that you're using it.
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
Amazing. Well, listen, I know another group that you also work a lot is with organisations. And over the course of this year, you mentioned to me before that companies are now having to accept this understanding that we're going to be working in a hybrid environment for quite some time now. And I thought some of our listeners might want to hear kind of practically some of the work that you've been doing around advising companies of how to manage that.
Yeah, I mean, right now, as you know, we're primarily virtual. There aren't many offices that have gone back. And when they do go back, it tends to be this hybrid model of some people working from home, some in the office. And if you've worked with teams in different locations, you have that experience of some team members are always virtual and some are in the room with you. But now that it looks like even in the near to medium term future, as we go back to work, so many companies are allowing employees to continue working from home, work remotely. We're going to have to accept this hybrid model. And what companies are coming to grips with is that this hybrid in-person virtual makeup of teams and companies is going to require hybrid culture as well. How do you create a culture that people feel appreciated in and want to work in and feel connected to each other the way we did when we all had the camaraderie of being in the office and able to have lunch together or hang out and have these serendipitous encounters with colleagues to talk about things and just bond and come up with ideas when we're half virtual. So we need an approach to culture that works for that as well. Hiring new employees and making them feel like part of the team when they're going to be a virtual team member and half their team is in person. How do you do this? And this is something I've been dealing with for years. I mean, at Facebook and Instagram, so many of your cross-functional partners and even core team members are in other offices. So how do you make them feel included and part of something when we're traditionally, I mean, our culture is about in-person celebrations. It's someone's birthday, let's get a cake or some snacks and get in a conference room and surprise them and do a little thing. How do you make people feel included in that is very, very difficult. And so I'm helping teams adapt their culture to suit that. And along with that comes communication norms. How are we using technology in a way that preserves work-life balance when our office is our home for a lot of us? How do you set healthy boundaries there too? How do you set norms as a team that respect that? But culture-wise, this has led to things like I recently piloted a book club with one of my corporate clients who they were aware of this issue. They had expanded during COVID. They were lucky enough that business was going well. They hired some new folks, and they were realizing there was this culture gap happening and wanted to bring people together. So we've done a lot of things to help fix that, but one of the newest and most fun things we did to improve culture or create some hybrid culture was a book club, because this is something you can participate no matter where you are. You could do a physical book, you could do an audio book, take your pick, and then we're going to gather and we're going to have some kind of shared experience around this new knowledge we've acquired, get to share, get to see each other, get to talk about each other, some people in person, some people virtual, or everyone, it doesn't matter. Send a little care package to all the employees with some food and drink to enjoy, make it feel like an occasion, make people feel cared for and like they're having a shared experience even when they're not in the room with you, was a big deal. And make it casual, come as you are. It's going to be an after-hours book club. You don't even have to leave your home. You didn't have to go anywhere. We didn't have to go do a workshop somewhere as part of an offsite. You read a book over the past 2 weeks in your free time, and now we get to talk about it and how we want it to change the way we work together. In this case, we were reading one of my favorite books for this kind of work, which is The 5 Languages of Workplace Appreciation. And so it's so important now that we're all virtual. How do you communicate appreciation to someone in a language or a medium that they feel appreciated versus just what you think will make people feel appreciated? So we had a ton of fun with that, and it was both a fun bonding experience but also something that could impact their culture in a meaningful, intentional way long term. So it checked multiple boxes in terms of how do we create a bond with people, especially new employees coming in. How do we have more fun conversations or just casual conversations here around a shared experience? And then how can this help shape our culture going forward? How does this help us understand how to navigate this new world of hybrid offices and hybrid culture?
I'm coming back to what you talked about at the beginning in terms of reclaiming conversation and the mixture of non-verbal cues as well as verbal cues. I know we also had a conversation about when video is actually really needed, what the benefits it brings, and actually when also you can kind of take a step away from that and get away from your screen a bit.
Yes, Georgie, this is the number one question that comes up. Zoom fatigue. What do we do about it? It seems so essential if we're going to be virtual or hybrid for the long term. Get off a long day of Zooms and you feel exhausted. Why is that? What do we do about it? And I mean, the first thing is, like, if you're in meetings all day, if you're in a culture that is very meeting driven, your calendar gets full of these meetings, and instead of moving from your desk to a meeting room, walking through your company, going to a new environment, seeing different people along the way, stopping and getting a snack or taking a bio break, all those kinds of things you get to enjoy meeting to meeting. Even if you're running from conference room to conference room, there's some environmental variety. You're focusing at different distances, you're seeing people, you're having these casual social interactions and just kind of having a moment to check in with yourself while you move around. if you're on Zoom all day, you're basically, the way I see a lot of my clients doing it, I mean, they have a setup with a laptop or something, and they're kind of hunched over it and staring at this screen or this camera that is a foot and a half from their face all day long. It's like, imagine, even if it wasn't a screen, which is already kind of like not great to be staring into a light that's being beamed into your eyes, but fixating on anything all day long that's just this far from you, all day, it doesn't leave you feeling good. It creates fatigue in the eyes, face. It doesn't feel natural to be staring at someone for an entire meeting the way we feel compelled to do in these sessions. So I talk about how to break that routine up and how to create some variety in the kinds of interactions you have, whether it's taking a filter to the kinds of meetings you have and deciding, here are the ones where I need to be at my computer because I'm maybe presenting, or I need to see a shared screen and we're going to have a collaboration session. I need to sit down for that like I'm in a meeting and have the tools in front of me and the setup and my notebook and a desk and surface to write on. But which of these meetings are just a conversation where maybe I'll take this meeting on my iPad and I'll sit the iPad on my couch and I'll sit on the other chair, caddy corner to it. It's like I've invited someone into my space and they see more of my environment, and it feels a little more natural to not be locked on with them all the time and kind of enjoy each other's environment that's not just like you in front of a computer. This can start to create some variety. Take people for a walk. So which of your meetings or conversations can just be voice? Not every meeting needs to be face-to-face. You can have a balance of those things. So choose which ones can be just a phone call, and maybe you take that one outside and go for a walk around your block or through the park. Create this variety to break up the kinds of interactions you're having. If we're not discerning about which meetings actually would benefit from a face-to-face interaction with someone where we see their facial expression, see the gestures they're making. When I meet a client for the first time, I don't want to do that over voice. I want to see them. I want them to see me. I want them to know what we're getting into. It's a human necessity to really create trust and create a bond with someone. You need that richer social experience like Sherry Turkle talks about. But once you know someone, you can start to balance. How much do we need FaceTime? How much can we do virtual? How much can be email? What's a healthy balance of those things? A useful balance of those things? Aligning on that and setting some norms with them is really important.
And reminding each other,
take your phone outside.
Reminding each other it is okay to look away. We don't have to stare into each other's eyes for an entire hour without blinking. Which I realise I've just done with you for the last 45 minutes, and my eyes are actually starting to sting. Even though you told me it's fine.
I know, I feel it too sometimes. And that for me is the trigger and the reminder. It's like, okay, I'm not creating enough variety. I'm spending too much time here. I need to get a little more intentional about how I'm breaking this up. And that's it. I mean, Zoom fatigue is staring in the same place all day, not moving. It doesn't feel good. So that's a fabulous starting point. I tell people all the time, like, where do you begin? Well, figure out which of your activities doesn't leave you feeling well. That's the signal from your body that you need to do something differently. Experiment with change there. Try something different. It's an experiment. Try it. See if it leaves you feeling better after a couple days. And if so, integrate it. If not, iterate. Try something different.
Amazing. Giancarlo, I'm going to end it there and say thank you so much for, wow. That has been an absolute pleasure, as always, talking to you. I wish we could talk for hours and hours.
Likewise, Georgie.
So thank you.
I'm honored and delighted to be here with you. We just have the best time. It's a real joy to talk to you about these things. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. If you like what you heard today and you'd like to hear more of our conversation with Giancarlo, particularly the bits where things start to get really juicy, then listen out for an episode to follow where we talk about the attention economy, leadership and technology, and just where we're going all wrong. And we'll have a stab at thinking about some of the solutions.